Well, I don't think I'm doing a very good job in explaining the different concepts at play in this chapter, I'm afraid. The difference between analytic and synthetic, the difference between a priori and empirical. But those are the kind of things that we can clear up in chat or discussion, whatever. But the really perhaps important aspect of this chapter, I think, is the way in which Russell tries to distinguish himself from Kant, at least from his version of Kant, in regards to the kind of things that we know when we know things a priori, and really things about the world a priori. Russell gives you a certain very quick rundown of what he believes to be the key elements of Kant's critical philosophy. Philosophy in terms of what reason or what the mind can know a priori, and at least his version of Kant is that Kant said that there are certain things that we can know a priori, but that's because of the nature of experience itself, and that the things that we can know a priori are basically the things that the structure of our own mind brings to or imprints on experience. That is, that a priori knowledge is really a result of the fact that our experience is a combination of sense data, which Kant did believe comes from something external to us, and concepts, which really make sense of those sense data, which give them form and make them intelligible, make the world intelligible. And what Russell is concerned with is the notion that our a priori knowledge is really a result of the structure of our own consciousness, of our own mind, and what he's interested in is distinguishing himself from that and saying that when we know something a priori, let's say that 2 + 2 = 4, or the laws of logic, that whatever is, or that the same thing cannot both be and not be, and that we're not articulating knowledge that we have of our own mind, that we're articulating knowledge of the world, of reality, that those things are facts about reality and facts independent of us, that is, that they would be true no matter if we existed or not. For instance, he characterizes Kant's way of thinking about it by saying this: we can be sure, Kant says, that anything we shall ever experience must show the characteristics affirmed of it in our a priori knowledge, because these characteristics are due to our own nature, and therefore nothing can ever come into our experience without acquiring these characteristics. And then a little bit later he says, the phenomenon, being a joint product of us and the thing in itself, is sure to have those characteristics which are due to us, and is therefore sure to conform to our a priori knowledge. Russell dislikes this idea that the world is in some way or another a product, a joint product of raw sense data that are given to us externally, and then our own conceptual shaping, you might say. He doesn't like this. For different reasons, I guess. For instance, in regard to logic and mathematics, he says, the thing to be accounted for is our certainty that the facts must always conform to logic and arithmetic. To say that logic and arithmetic are contributed by us does not account for this. And he says, the thing about the certainty of our statements made in basic logic and basic mathematics is that certainty does not depend upon us in any way thinking a certain way or being a certain way. That's just the way the world is. For instance, with regard to the law of contradiction, he says, thus the law of contradiction is about things and not merely about thoughts. That is, when we talk about the law of contradiction, we're talking about a law of the way things are, not just a law of the way we think or the way we happen to think. And although belief in the law of contradiction is a thought, the law of contradiction itself is not a thought, but a fact concerning things in the world. So I think that's what is really important about this chapter, I guess, is that Russell is really fleshing out his own ideas about concepts, about our knowledge of general principles, and especially, not so much how we know them, but what they are, is what he really wants to get at. It is, we said before that general principles in Russell's philosophy do not exist, yet they are real. He says towards the end of this chapter, the fact seems to be that all our a priori knowledge is concerned with entities which do not, properly speaking, exist. Those entities being general principles, concepts, those things that he has said earlier that we know by acquaintance, that we know directly. And then the question is, well, if they're not physical, that is, they're not particular things in the world, and they, on the other hand, are not mental in the sense that they're not our thoughts, not simply the contents of our mind, then what are they? And how do they exist? Or how are they real? If they don't exist in that way. He continues towards the end of the chapter, these entities are such as can be named by parts of speech which are not substantives. They are such entities as qualities and relations. So that, I think, will become more clear what he means by that in the next chapter, but the kind of things that he's interested in are the entities that he's interested in. He says are such as can be named by parts of speech which are not substantives. That is not, if we look at our parts of speech, substantives are things. If we say the red ball is in the room, then ball is a substantive, room is a substantive. What's not a substantive? Red and in. And those are the kind of things that he's actually interested in. He continues, suppose, for instance, that I am in my room. I exist, and my room exists. But does in exist? Yet obviously the word in has a meaning. It denotes a relation which holds between me and my room. This relation is something, although we cannot say that it exists in the same sense in which I and my room exist. That is, the concept of in, which is a way of articulating a relation between two things. What sort of thing is that? What sort of reality does it have? That's what Russell is interested in. And that's what he'll be exploring in the next chapter, chapter 9, The World of Universals.